The only alternative is that posthumans are actually probable, and we simply haven't yet found or recognized them. We don't have objective evidence for this possibility, but we know too little to reject it. As evidence for prehumans mounts and posthumans remain elusive, some may despair. Others will embrace the angel argument and trust that posthumans probably already exist because our future correlates with their probability. A lack of evidence is not evidence to the contrary, and this lack enables reasonable hope. Anthropologists observe that our destructive capacity is increasing at an exponential rate. We have evidence that our ancestors used spears 5 million years ago, but did not fire harden the points until 500,000 years ago. Over 100,000 years later, we began making complex blades. Roughly 65,000 years after that, we began using the bow and arrow. 14,000 years after that, we began using gunpowder. Less than 1,000 years later, we used a nuclear weapon in war. Meanwhile, our defensive capacity increasingly lags. Clothing was not enough, shields were too small, armor was too slow, walls fell to gunpowder, and even oceans narrowed to intercontinental ballistic missiles. Today, the toughest personal armor is only bullet resistant. The most secure information systems depend on narrowing advantages. And we've persisted for decades with no practical defense against nuclear explosions. Benevolence explains our survival and continuing evolution, given the growing gap between destructive and defensive capacities. Benevolence is not evenly distributed among us, and it's surely encouraged by self-interest. However, at least among the empowered and on the whole, our common interest has resulted in at least enough benevolence for us to get where we are. Although we haven't always paused before pulling the trigger, we've paused enough to enable the present. We haven't always chosen the right leaders or enacted the right laws, but we're still here. We've demonstrated at least that much benevolence. Assuming we're not unique, posthumans probably have increased faster in destructive than defensive capacity, and, according to the benevolence argument, posthumans probably are more benevolent than us. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have survived long enough to become posthumans, and neither will we. A common task to which we've applied computers is that of simulation. The earliest simulations provided basic numeric output. Later simulations interpreted their numbers into abstract visualizations. Today, simulations present whole worlds with three-dimensional geographies approaching photorealism and immersive interactivity for millions of users engaged in research, commerce, entertainment, warfare by proxy of their avatars. As computing power increases, we'll probably continue to run increasingly detailed world simulations. Unabated, increasing detail would eventually obfuscate differences between our world and computed worlds, to the point that simulation and virtual would be poor descriptors. If posthumans attain such capacity and use it to compute many worlds like those in their past, then they probably are not the first or only to do so. Rather, as established in the simulation argument, as posthumans compute more worlds, it becomes more likely that they are themselves in a computed world, among the many actually computed, rather than a theoretical, non-computed world. The same would be true for us. We can generalize this reasoning, which is valid for any creative process that is feasible and consistent with observation. For example, either posthumans probably don't terraform or cosmoform many worlds like those in their past, or posthumans probably terraformed or cosmoformed our world. By extrapolation, either posthumans probably don't create many worlds like those in their past, or posthumans probably created our world. The only alternative is that we probably will go extinct before becoming posthumans. Present trends are consistent with the possibility that posthumans actually would create many worlds like those in their past. The upper bounds of computing technology continue to rise, methodologies for space exploration continue to expand, and our understanding of the universe continues to grow. Moreover, the benefits from these efforts perpetuate our interest in forwarding them. At this point, it's easy to imagine that posthumans could and would realize potential that's already grasped by the human imagination. If ever we create many worlds like our own, we almost certainly would not be the first or only to do so. Our perspective regarding our origin should account for our expectation regarding our creative potential. It would be remarkably inconsistent and improbable to assert that we will eventually create many worlds like our own without also acknowledging the creation argument, which is that posthumans probably created our world. As a whole, the New God argument uses 7 assumptions, consistent with contemporary science and technological trends. The first assumption is the faith position, assumes we will not go extinct before becoming posthumans. The second assumption, the great filter argument, establishes that either prehumans are improbable, or we probably will go extinct before becoming posthumans, or posthumans already exist. Number 3, trends in biological research suggest that prehumans are probable. The fourth assumption, sociological observations, suggest that either posthumans probably have not increased faster in destructive than defensive capacity, or posthumans probably are more benevolent than us, or we probably will go extinct before becoming posthumans. Assumption 5, trends in weapons technology suggest that posthumans probably have increased faster in destructive than defensive capacity. Number 6, the simulation argument establishes that either we probably will go extinct before becoming posthumans, or posthumans probably do not compute many worlds like those in their past, or posthumans probably computed our world. And number 7, trends in computing technology suggest that posthumans probably create many worlds like those in their past. From those 7 assumptions, the New God argument makes 3 conclusions. Number 1 was the angel argument, which concludes that posthumans probably already exist. Number 2, the benevolence argument concludes that posthumans probably are more benevolent than us. And number 3, the creation argument concludes that posthumans probably created our world. Posthumans, more benevolent than us, that created our world may qualify as God in some religions. Mormonism serves as an example. Founder Joseph Smith proclaimed that God was once as we are now, became exalted, and instituted laws whereby others could learn how to be gods, exactly as all gods have done before. Wilford Woodruff taught that God is progressing in knowledge and power without end, and it is just so with us. Lorenzo Snow prophesied that children now at play making mud worlds will progress in knowledge and power over nature to organize worlds as gods. Accordingly, the New God argument justifies faith in a natural God that became God through natural means, suggesting how we might do the same. As emphasized in the argument, benevolence and creation are among the means and essential to them. Transhumanists advocate trust in such posthumans, our potential, even if they don't exist yet. However, the New God argument proves our trust probably is vain unless they already exist. In his book, The God Delusion, the talented evolutionary biologist and leading voice of the new atheist movement, Richard Dawkins writes the following, quote, Whether we ever get to know them or not, there are very probably alien civilizations that are superhuman to the point of being godlike in ways that exceed anything a theologian could possibly imagine. Their technical achievements would seem as supernatural to us as ours would seem to a Dark Age peasant transported to the 21st century. Imagine his response to a laptop computer, a mobile telephone, a hydrogen bomb, or a jumbo jet. As Arthur C. Clarke put it in his third law, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. The miracles wrought by our technology would have seemed to the ancients no less remarkable than the tales of Moses parting the waters, or Jesus walking upon them. The aliens of our SETI signal would be to us like gods. In what sense, then, would the most advanced SETI aliens not be gods? In what sense would they be superhuman, but not supernatural? In a very important sense, which goes to the heart of this book, The God Delusion. The crucial difference between gods and godlike extraterrestrials lies not in their properties, but in their provenance. Entities that are complex enough to be intelligent are products of an evolutionary process. No matter how godlike they may seem when we encounter them, they didn't start that way. Science fiction authors have even suggested, and I cannot think how to disprove it, that we live in a computer simulation, set up by some vastly superior civilization. But the simulators themselves would have to come from somewhere. The laws of probability forbid all notions of their spontaneously appearing without simpler antecedents. They probably owe their existence to a perhaps unfamiliar version of Darwinian evolution. Eternal progression is what some religions call that perhaps unfamiliar version of Darwinian evolution. God is what some religions call those godlike extraterrestrials that didn't start that way. Whether we ever get to know them or not, there are very probably gods. So concludes the New God argument.